occupies one side of the street and the railway is on the other side of the street. And there's some of the old hotels, the Artesian Hotel with the Tree of Knowledge in the foreground, and the Shakespearean Hotel on the first corner with the flag flying high. And these are all historic pubs, and they were probably, I would say, on the scene when the meeting was formed, or the party was formed under the Tree of Knowledge. On this side of the street you can see the nice way in which the railway has tidied up the footwalk there. That's the Artesian Hotel, and anyone wanting to do a bit of an old pub crawl would do well to come to Barcaldine. We thought it was a very nicely laid out little place, and very, very attractive and interesting from a historic point of view. That's the Shakespeare Hotel. The map at the railway siding, or where the town of Barcaldine is written, as you can see up there on the appropriate point in Queensland. So there we have it. That's just another one of the pubs in the main street of Barcaldine. That's the Globe. That's another old hotel down there on the corner. So we'll say farewell to Barcaldine. We spent the night here last night in a motel, and we'll be taking off now for Longreach and the Hall of Fame. So it's goodbye at the moment from Barcaldine. Tell you this, it's a windy day in Longreach. Welcome to Longreach, gateway to the outback, home of the Stockmans Hall of Fame. We're rugged up against this wind here today, believe you me. There he is, the famous Stockman statue outside the Hall of Fame at Longreach. And looking round the grounds we see the giant windmill in the background, and coming round now to the architecture of the building proper, which is quite eye-catching, and it's on the right side of Longreach, actually, to Longreach. We're starting off our tour of the Hall of Fame this morning by sitting in the theaterette and watching the 15-minute or so display, and that they give us an introduction. If you don't want to watch this, it lasts about 15 minutes. If you don't want to watch this, you best fast forward through it. It's not all that interesting. One of the interesting displays in the Hall of Fame was this map of Australia, which by pressing a button shows you the travels of the various explorers that paved the way back in the early days and helped to conquer the unknown, and were pathfinders, some of the famous explorers of a bygone day: Giles, Stewart, Gregory, Forrest, and etc. And it even shows the path of the railway, the transcontinental, going from Perth across to Adelaide. There it is there, the transcontinental railway line bridging the continent. Shows the explorations of the explorer Goss there in the Northern Territory area. The explorer Wells in Western Australia. Canning, the Canning stock route is named after him, of course, in Western Australia. F.T. Gregory in the northwest of Western Australia. And Forrest, that's A. Forrest, another of the explorers in Western Australia. Warburton, I guess the Warburton Ranges are named after him. In Queensland, a Jardine, and I guess the Jardine River is called after him. Also in Queensland, little area there, that's the Daintree exploration. Then there was Landsborough, also in Queensland Northern Territory. The Major Mitchell explorations in virtually New South Wales. Ludwig Leichhardt, Blaxland, Lawson and Wentworth. The Oxley explorations, Oxley and Evans. You would hardly need to be told that was the Burke and Wills ill-fated exploration. The Cunningham exploration in the Queensland, New South Wales. Hume and Hovell. McDowell Stewart from the south to the north. Evans, the New South Wales explorer. And down in Tasmania we have Franklin in the Apple Isle. Let's just have another look at the Oxley exploration there in New South Wales, and you can see that one there, and there's a photograph on the wall of John Oxley. Display of the crossing of the Blue Mountains of Blaxland, Lawson and Wentworth. And incidentally, the condition of bringing a video camera into the Hall of Fame is that you leave the tripod outside. I left mine at the office and collected it when I came from, but they won't let a tripod inside. There's some of the famous outlaws and crims of bygone days, bush rangers, and this was an interesting display, and you'll notice the peculiar face as it comes up.
Except for Scotty Watts, isn't it? Come to think of it, and the quiet view. All mentioned. Me, I was lucky. I worked with some of the greats. Hungry Tyson and the convicts of Napa Marie. Never a drive under 1,000 miles, so you're about. Rule 1, never take it for granted.
Charles, and that was Todd.
Said Hanrahan, if rain don't come this week. Drought. It can come without warning and leave behind a devastated landscape. Parched plains, cracked and hardened by searing heat, littered with the bleached bones of perished stock, the ghostly silhouettes of dead trees, a stark, dreadful stillness. Since settlement, the great drought of 1890 and most severe. Practically the whole of the continent was affected. In the outback, waterholes dried up. Stations were reduced to feeding their stock with any scrub they could find. But with virtually no rain for 7 years, time ran out. The loss of feed and water led to a slow, agonizing death for millions of cattle, sheep and horses. More than half the stock in Australia was lost. We live in the world's driest continent. For the people on the land, drought really can be a natural disaster. We'll all be ruined, said Hanrahan, before the year is out.
In Australia, if it's not bushfires or drought, it's floods. Even in the country's driest regions, devastating floods periodically wash the landscape, submerging vast plains in swirling waters meters deep. For the people of the outback, a downpour can be a terrifying time. A long dry period can break quickly and without warning. Hundreds of millimeters of drenching rain can fall in a matter of days. As the rivers break their banks, entire townships stand by helplessly while the raging waters rise. Main streets become waterways. Families must be evacuated as their houses slowly submerge. Tragically, lives are often lost. On the plains, animals fight their own desperate struggle for survival. Afterwards, when the waters have subsided, life must go on. Ironically, the benefits of floodwaters in arid regions can outweigh the disadvantages. The plains grow green and lush, the stock fatten nicely, and the people, they turn the tragedy into a tale for
From the 1840s up to the 1880s, grew longer as the tracks carved out by explorers linked the townships. By 1850, a regular service operated between Sydney and Melbourne. Coaches would bounce along the bullock tracks, carrying up to 8 passengers, their luggage, and that eagerly awaited cargo, the mail. From the mid-1850s, coach travel became synonymous with Cobb & Co., who'd established a service from Melbourne to the goldfields. Drivers and passengers faced many hazards, not the least being attacks by bushrangers. By 1870, services had extended as far as central and northern Queensland, and the company was harnessing 6,000 horses every day. Inevitably, though, the railways took over, except in the outback, where coaches continued to play an essential role in opening up remote areas for settlement. First fleets had adapted so well that before long, fine stallions were imported and the breeding of thoroughbreds developed. From these were bred the working horse of Australia. He's a light and hardy animal with a wonderful constitution, good feet, good endurance, and a good temperament. It was inevitable that the horse would become a popular means of transport. If he didn't have a rider on his back, he found himself attached to implements for clearing and farming the land, and all sorts of wheeled vehicles, from wagons to omnibuses. The really heavy work was the domain of the draft horse. With the gold rush, this mighty animal came into its own, carting supplies to the diggings and working around the mines. The Australian horse also proved itself in the Boer War and the First World War, transporting troops and artillery. From the very earliest days of settlement, horses have served Australia well. The swagman begins in the 1850s, when thousands of gold seekers tramped into the countryside, their few possessions bundled up in swags. Men wandering on an endless, uncharted journey, calling in at homesteads to seek food and lodging, and hopefully a job. More swaggies appeared during the 1890s depression, shearers and stockmen roaming the outback, hoping their boots would last until they found work. The 1930s depression saw more men trudging into the countryside, and though they called themselves bagmen or hobos, their experiences placed them firmly in the tradition of the swagman.
Get on there, you lumbering lumps of lad! Come on, move it!
The bullocky urges on his team, and another load of settlers' supplies lurches off to the inland. From the 1840s up to the 1880s, bullocks were the main beasts of burden in the outback. Teams of up to 40 would haul loads of stores out to the station properties and return with produce for the city markets. The bigger wagons could carry up to 60 bales of wool.
Come, Bluey, you cursed animal!
The bullocky developed a kind of affection for his beasts. But the tenderness was tempered by a traditional toughness, and the bullocky would control his team with curses and the crack of his fearsome whip. Bullocks were popular because horses were scarce and expensive. They weren't as strong as horses, and nowhere near as fast, but they had great stamina and would haul those wagons surely and steadily. However, as time passed, the slow, sturdy bullock was passed over in favour of faster modes of transport.
Please do not cut past me anymore.
They have no choice but to tackle their state behaviours.
The first telephone exchanges in Australia began operating in 1880. They were introduced to rural areas in the early 1900s. In those days, a network of telephone lines spread out to rural locations. From those connecting points, the farmers rigged up their own lines to their properties. They were fairly primitive, but somehow the calls got through. People quickly grew accustomed to the newfangled idea. They knew it would work, but they didn't know how it worked. The local telephone mechanic was as highly regarded as the vet. Often property shared a line of the exchange. These were called party lines, for obvious reasons.
He weighed 8.5 pounds. A boy, oh, beauty.
Operators connected calls manually and played a valued role
What did it say?
in more ways than one.
He said he loves you.
For families remote from one another, the telephone took on a special importance, particularly in times of emergency. Today, a nationwide telecommunications network is being made available to virtually all Australians. Through digital radio concentrator systems powered by solar cells, people in even the most remote areas are being provided with a fully automated telephone service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Method of mastering is on horseback. Technique if you're going to do it right. Everything you do with the cattle has to be directed at getting them to the market in the best conditions. Now, after they've been ridden up, right, the ones ready for the market have got to be cut out of the general herd. So the ringers ride into the middle of a grazing mob, nice and quiet, pick the bullocks they want, and gradually work into the outside. If one of them tries to turn back, quick as a flash, the horse is on the flanks and gets it moving over to the smaller bull. Then that herd gets driven to the station, where the trucks are waiting to take them to market. So the stock horse has got to be good after cattle. His job is to keep them off together, right? And if there's a runaway calf, well, then he's got to catch it, turn it, bring it in. But he's also got to keep other animals out of it. So he needs a good eye, and he's got to concentrate. He's got to outwit them, or at least make them think he can outwit them. So, a good stock horse, well, you want him to be sure-footed, because you're going through all kinds of conditions. One day you're on the flat, the next you're in the hills. Sometimes it's rough. It might be slippery as hell. When you're on a chase, you've got to be able to ride flat out with him staying on his feet. And he's got to clear logs and so on, you know, without dropping his pace. So he's got to be able to shorten his stride without losing speed. You want him to have spirit when you're on the go. The rest of the time, he ought to be quiet and gentle and go along with you. Comfort's a big factor. A good horse, he's got a nice even gait and doesn't throw you around in the saddle. You're on him most of the day, but you can concentrate better if you're comfortable. And of course, a stock horse has got to be tough and in good condition. So, there's the filly you want in Elwood, the Australian stock.
Well, you might ask, what is this picture doing here? I discovered during the shooting of the video in the Hall of Fame that my video had a dirty pickup head. So I had to clean the head, which I have now done, and to test the machine and make sure I get out of where the videotape was affected. I'm shooting Ned Kelly. I mean, he's shooting someone else, but it's obviously Ned Kelly, and the situation is obviously Glen Rowan. But it's, in true point of fact, where we are at the moment is in the motel at Blackall, and this is a carving on the wall of our unit at Blackall.
Who are travelling further out. They're mostly Celtic stock, they're as solid as a rock, and they're undergirded by fire, flood and drought. Their horizons are undaunted, their courage will be flaunted. As they take up each selection, they've a constant predilection to head in the right direction, further out. It's dry, all right, said young O'Neill, with which astute remark. He squats down upon his heels and chews to press fast. And so around the chorus ran. It's keeping dry, no doubt. We'll all be ruined, said Hanrahan, before the year is out. The crops are done, you'll have your work to save one bag of grain. From here, way out the back of Burke, they're singing out for rain. They're singing out for rain, he said. All the tanks are dry. The congregation scratched his head and gazed around the sky. In God's good time, some glad smells of dripping spout and windowsill kept talking to themselves. It pelted all day long, singing at its work, till every heart took up the song way out the back of Burke, and every creek a banker ran and dams filled over top. We'll all be ruined, said Hanrahan, if this rain don't stop.
At the 6 Mile in Winston, the work passed around, and Savage the Moscover has just come to town. He lands on the common, he's looking for men, he's taken a mob into Queensland. He's a legend in the outback, he's a man among men, and Savage the Moscover, and he's riding again, 2004 police. Why I wonder that's the mob that he's taken into Queensland. Max Savage the Moscover, he'll take them all over, taken the bullets to Queensland. Max Savage the Moscover, he'll take them all over, taken the bullets to Queensland. First night, Stockmans, traveling well, is a jingle of the hobble, is a condamine bell. Sing a song as we watch them, make the brothers lie down, for the rush all the way into Queensland. But the wolf is like loose on the Murray track, dead men, dead bullets, first is out back. Apples ride station and the patrol is raging, hard times on the way into Queensland. Max Harry's the Moscow, he'll take them all over, taking the bullets to Queensland. Max Harry's the Moscow, he'll take them all over, taking the bullets to Queensland. We were the only settlers who traveled farther out. Strangers in strange lands, a fire flooded out. Thoughts of home and heartbreak, sometimes caused us down. But through it all, we were the pioneers. You've heard of the Moscow, but they were not alone. There were Stockmans, cooks and jackaroos, more than bread to roam. Behind the men who travelled were women and men. Human